And next up, our guest is my favorite Martin Frank, DelawareOnline.com. Of course, does a great job with us here. It's been a while, Martin. Hopefully the Thanksgiving holiday treated you well. It treated the Eagles fans well, and always appreciate the time. How the heck are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I don't know about you, but I'm still eating leftovers.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of meatballs and sausage left over. We do an Italian Thanksgiving in the Serritella household, so not much turkey floating around, but plenty of macaroni here. And we're feasting just like the Philadelphia Eagles, putting up a 40-burger on the Green Bay Packers Sunday night. But I want to get into the breaking news or the latest news this morning. And I know yesterday you were all over it with Coach Sirianni and your exchange in the press conference in terms of what this Chauncey Gardner-Johnson injury could mean. And I know you just published an article on DelawareOnline.com just this morning in terms of what the Eagles' secondary impact and analysis could look like and the ramifications there. Now, we're just getting drift of the news. I am not a doctor, but my understanding is we don't know the severity. My understanding, though, Martin, is this could be a 6-week deal. Worst case scenario, probably out for the rest of the season. I think if you told the Eagles right now you'd have Chauncey Gardner back in time for the Saints or Giants to warm up for the playoffs run, I think they'd probably say, hey, sign me up right now. What is your thoughts? What are you hearing? How big of a deal is this, especially with the Titans on deck?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it seemed like a pretty bad injury when it happened. I mean, the fact that he could barely walk off the field was taken right to a cart, and carted into the locker room was kind of like a pretty decent indication that it was going to be something serious. I personally thought it was they announced it as a rib injury, so maybe he broke some ribs, being a 4-week injury, but the lacerated kidney, I mean, that's pretty bad. And, if they could get him back, I mean, I don't know a timetable or anything like that. I mean, they're estimating maybe 6 weeks, which, that's like maybe the last game of the season, January 8th against the Giants. If they get back for that, plus, if they end up clinching the number 1 seed, they got another 2-week break after that. So, I mean, I would think he'd be back for the first playoff game, but, obviously having him back for, the final regular season game would probably help him quite a bit as far as getting back into the swing of things. But yeah, it's a pretty significant injury. I mean, he was leading the NFL in interceptions with 6. He was playing pretty well, at safety. He kind of gave them a big spark that they needed back there, compared to what they had last year at the position. So it's going to be a big loss, and they're going to have to figure out a way to compensate for it. I mean, they used Reed Blankenship in this past game against the Packers, and he did okay. I mean, he had the interception, which was a great play on his part, like jumping up and anticipating the throw from Rodgers and picking it off. But, he also gave up a couple catches too. And, teams are going to take advantage of him, or going to try to take advantage of him, I should say. I mean, they know that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is not going to be in there. So, he would be the perceived weak link of the secondary because, Bradbury and Slay have been playing so well. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to get a lot of attention pretty quickly.
Yeah, you can't teach experience. And quite frankly, looking at the secondary outside of Slay and Bradbury, I mean, there's a lot to be desired suddenly with Devontae Maddox out. You're down to Josiah Scott in the nickel. Yep. Zach Fearson probably playing more reps than you want to. Marcus Epps, who's kind of been an Iron Man, I think he's kind of a hit or miss kind of guy in the secondary as well. Do the Eagles, dare I say, explore street free agents and reinforcements like we saw on the defensive line? Not a whole heck of a lot out there, but is that something they're going to entertain, or are they comfortable with what they have in house, do you think?
I would think they would entertain, looking into that. But I mean, you also have to realize if they get somebody off the street, depending on if they played at all this year or not, like what kind of shape they're in, how long it would take to learn the defense.
What's your thoughts on Jaquiski Tart? Because we had him here back in August. He's still out there. Is that somebody? Does he give you anything more than Kayvon Wallace offers?
I don't think so. I mean, if they did, they would have kept him. I mean, he was, and I don't think he's been with anybody since the Eagles let him go. I could be wrong about that, but he would be, if you're bringing him in, and that's the case, he hasn't played all year. Might take a little while for him to get back into game shape. I mean, it's a little bit different with a guy like that as opposed to a couple guys they brought in off the street, and Linval Joseph and Damakan Sue. I mean, those are bigger guys. They don't have to be running up and down the field like 50 times a game or whatever, in pass coverage. So, it would take him a little bit to, get back in game shape. Now he does know the defensive playbook because he was here all summer, so that would be an advantage. But yeah, I mean, it's possible, like for depth and everything like that, but I don't think he'd be playing ahead of Blankenship or Kayvon Wallace, at least to start off. I mean, it might take a little bit. And if he was really that good, he would have stayed, at the end of training camp. So we'll see.
No, I tend to agree with you. And we're talking to Martin Frank, DelawareOnline.com. What about a guy? He's not a safety, but he was reunited with the Patriots earlier this year in camp. Malcolm Butler. You've got Darius Slay had that back issue, which is a tricky deal because a back could flare up at any time. Avonte Maddox isn't back yet. Does it make sense to bring in a veteran guy who has playoff experience, has played in the Super Bowl, has that kind of pedigree? What are your thoughts on a Malcolm Butler? Is it worth kicking the tires on?
Maybe. I mean, Slay and Bradbury have mostly been out there for just about every snap. I mean, I know Slay had a couple injury issues earlier in the season, but he's never missed a game and everything like that. I mean, they do like Zach McPherson as a backup. They could put Josiah Scott outside if it got down to it. But yeah, I mean, look, the Eagles are obviously going for a deep playoff run. And if there's someone out there, a veteran guy who can help them, who could kind of learn the playbook and get up to speed, I mean, they would look into it. I wouldn't rule anything out. I mean, if it's Malcolm Butler, if it's somebody else, if you mentioned Jaquiski Tart at safety or nickel or whatever, I mean, they're going to look at everything. And I don't think they're going to leave anything to chance. Now, if they don't do anything, I mean, that's not an indication that they didn't try. It might be just an indication that they like what they have and, they're willing to go forward with what they have as opposed to bringing somebody in. So, there are a lot of possibilities. I think they're going to explore as many of them as possible.
Oh, yeah. The secondary is certainly, I think, outside of tight end, the biggest issue on this, special teams is probably the biggest issue.
Yeah.
We'll get into that, but
yeah, one I'm sorry to interrupt, but one thing people don't realize is like Avonte Maddox. I mean, that's a pretty big loss. I mean, he was playing as well as any nickel corner in the NFL. I mean, Josiah Scott has done a decent job. He had the interception Monday night and everything like that, but I mean, he's not at the same level as Avonte Maddox. Now he's eligible to come off IR, I believe, December 11th for the Giants game. Whether or not he does is another question. But I mean, I would think with the hamstring injury, there's a good chance he'd be back either the 11th or maybe soon thereafter. So that'll be big. And then if Avonte Maddox is back, then you can kind of rotate Josiah Scott in that safety mix too, because he's got experience at both nickel and safety and everything like that. So it'd make him stronger. But I think they might just decide to weather the storm, knowing that they'll probably be getting Avonte Maddox back in the next few weeks or something like that. But we'll see.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going with Avonte Maddox is bigger, more than meets the eye there, and he is eligible, I believe, for that Giants game next week. Somebody who's eligible this week is Jordan Davis. I mentioned Nick Sirianni was more elusive than Miles Sanders running the tackle trap in answering that question yesterday. But it sounds like we won't really truly find out the status of Jordan Davis until tomorrow when the Eagles take the practice field. Is that what you're anticipating as well?
Yeah, actually, it might not even be till Thursday because they're only going to do a walkthrough practice tomorrow. They kind of started the last couple of weeks like turning Wednesdays into a walkthrough day, just to give the guys a little bit more rest. And as you get later in the season, they did that last year and it kind of worked for them. So they're going to do it again. It seems like they've already started doing that. So they do have to put out an injury report. So it would be like an estimate. But if Davis is still on injured reserve, they don't have to list them. So it might not be till Thursday. But I would think, I've only seen Jordan Davis walking around the locker room. He doesn't have any kind of like wrap or anything like that on his ankle. I mean, I would think that there's a pretty good chance that his 21-day practice window gets open. Whether or not that's enough time for him to play Sunday is another question, but I would think, in the next week or so, he might be coming back. I think it's sooner rather than later, and we'll know for sure on Thursday, maybe even tomorrow.
Interesting. Tom Brady started this new trend. Let's just take Wednesdays off. Aaron Rodgers said, hey, I want in on the action. I'm not practicing Wednesday. Now you got the Eagles with this Club Med atmosphere, Martin. I believe this is where the root of special teams and tackling woes originated from back in training camp when you had these 45-minute, hour-long practices. And I always said, well, what the heck? If you're going to cut practice short, at least go play some special teams and practice some special teams, because special teams practice is essentially a walkthrough. I never understood this. And I never understood the lack of tackling. You bring out these blue donuts and do these tackling drills. I mean, you can't replicate real life tackling, but I mean, I'm half joking, but I'm half serious. Like, might it not be the worst idea, instead of having these walkthroughs on Wednesday, Martin? Hey, maybe we can have some special teams practice. Maybe that might help this ball club.
Well, I mean, they do work on special teams like every day in practice. It's all varying degrees and everything like that. I get what you're saying, but it's a trade-off. I mean, you want guys to be healthy, you want guys to be fresh going in the latter part of the season, getting ready for the playoffs and everything. I mean, the collective bargaining agreement, they kind of ruled out tackling anyway during practices during the season. So there isn't a whole lot of that going on. You just gotta like make it work somehow. And the way, like, I mean, special teams all around the league has kind of been de-emphasized to some extent anyway. Like, a lot of teams go for it on fourth down if it's within like 2 or 3 yards and they're on the plus side of the 50, so there isn't as much punting, kickoffs, you kick it into the end zone, and, a lot of teams would prefer that, not even trying to run the ball back, and you get the ball at the 25 and you start from there. I mean, the problem with the Eagles is that, like, the other teams know that they don't have very good kick and punt returners. So they're, at least on kick returns, they're kicking it short of the end zone. So making them run it back and everything like that. And that's kind of not worked out very well for them. And as far as coverage, I mean, the Eagles definitely need to get better as far as kick and, punt return coverage. And, maybe they'll work on that some more. But I mean, there isn't a whole lot more they can do other than maybe like put a couple starters in there, but then you run the risk of burning those guys out. I mean, where's the trade-off? It's if there's one thing you're going to sacrifice, I mean, the fact that they're 10-1, excuse me, 10-1 right now, and we're complaining about, special teams. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world,
Well, I'm a little bit at the opposite end of the spectrum, Martin. I'm a big believer. I place a big emphasis on special teams. I believe truly 1/3 of the game, and I get it. Like, I don't disagree that teams kind of quote unquote de-emphasize the importance or value of it. I don't think it's just the Philadelphia Eagles problem, and I think part of that issue is because the kick returns, you don't see as much of it, and unless you're the Green Bay Packers with a newly minted Devin Hester back there, the way the Eagles made him look.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, special teams is a mentality, man. Like you said, there's nothing that can be done. Well, if you want to be radical about it, you can fire Michael Clay and send a message to the team. I'm just saying, like you can do something. Now, granted, Nick Sirianni, I give him credit in yesterday's presser. He manned up. He took full responsibility. He said it's on me. But like, right, it's the definition of insanity. You keep trying out the same guys, doing the same thing with the same coverage. You can't expect different results. Like something at some point has to change, because I will tell you, special teams is going to creep up on you, and right when you least expect it. It could be the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely. Yeah, it could definitely, be the difference between winning and losing a playoff game. I get all that. I mean, I saw the game last night. I mean, the Colts started the second half. They were totally dead. They started the second half with an 89-yard kickoff return and, turned that into a touchdown and everything, got back into the game. So, yeah, it can make a big difference. I get what you said, but, I don't think it's quite like, you break it down as 33% of the game. I mean, I think it's a little bit less than that now, just the way everything has kind of been de-emphasized and all that. But, like I said, if it's, you're 10-1 and you're complaining about special teams, that's not the worst thing in the world. And yeah, Michael Clay probably, I would think, isn't coming back next year. But I mean, I also think it kind of sends a bad message to the team when they're 10-1 and the special teams coordinator gets fired in the middle of the season too. So, that's another issue. But yeah, I mean, they can
I get your point. I get your point, and I could probably spend the next hour going point counterpoint, right? Because hey, the first touchdown that Green Bay had was set up by the kick return. That second half kick return, another big play. 2 minutes to go in the game. I mean, they're giving up 50 yards of return.
Yeah.
Position battle. I'm just saying, hey, I digress. We're talking to Martin Frank, online.com. You want to get a final comment in on the special team?
Yeah, I do. Like, and we were talking before about Avonte Maddox. Well, he's a big special teams guy too, and I think his absence hurts there too. Like, Nick Sirianni yesterday was talking about, he was asked about maybe putting starters on the special teams unit. Well, Avonte would be awesome for that, and maybe, when he comes back, that would be the case. You could put Bradbury on there. I mean, you can put TJ Edwards. I mean, I know TJ does special teams work, but maybe more. I mean, the really only short-term fix is to move a couple of starters back onto the special teams unit, but then you also run the risk of exposing them to more injury, getting them burned out, down the stretch and everything like that. So there's that's the only short-term fix really that they can do right now, is just maybe put another starter or two more on the special teams unit.
Okay, let me ask you about Andre Dillard, because he played some left guard there when Dickerson came out of the game. I don't recall us seeing him at left guard. Is this just kind of preparation down the stretch, playoffs, cross training? If God forbid they have to, dip into Dillard, is he a guy that's just kind of there to play tackle or guard at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I was as surprised as everybody else, because I don't think he's ever played guard before, like anywhere, like college, high school. Yeah. I mean, he's always been a left tackle. I mean, I think his rookie year, they tried to put him in at right tackle and place Lane Johnson. That was a disaster. He was benched, by halftime. So they pretty much kept him strictly as a left tackle. Now, last year they tried, making him the swing tackle and everything like that. And, I personally have never seen him practice or play guard before. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible. I was kind of surprised they didn't put Cam Jurgens in there, because he's kind of, considered the backup center and also backup guard, but maybe they just want to keep him, as the backup right guard. I don't think you'll ever see Dillard playing right guard. I think they like keeping him on the left side. So it was an interesting development. But I'd like to see, Dillard's, this is probably it for Dillard, because he'll be a free agent after the season. And I think somebody will pay him to be a starting tackle somewhere. But the Eagles obviously aren't going to. So, if he's their best backup at left guard, then do it. Sure. I mean, that would be great, if it ever came down to that. And, Landon Dickerson has had, ankle issues throughout his career and everything. So it's very possible that, if it came down to it in the playoffs, Andre Dillard would be the guy at left guard. So,
there's a lot going on with the ankles and the Eagles, man. We got to tape those ankles up better or something. I don't know. But to your point, Dillard will sign somewhere in the offseason, and Howie will gladly take that 3rd or 4th round compensation pick. One more question, just looking back on this Packers game. I'm curious to just get your random thoughts on the whole Miles Sanders. Obviously had a career day. This coming after he was, I don't want to use the word benched, but he was on the sidelines there when Boston Scott was icing the game after Miles drew the big pass interference and then ran for a first down. It was Boston Scott icing the game. And then there was Boston Scott out there starting the game.
Yeah, you noticed that too.
Are you reading into any of this? Was he in the doghouse there? What's going on?
I have no idea what was going on in the 4th quarter of that Colts game. I mean, Sanders drew that, like you mentioned, that 39-yard pass interference penalty. They got down to like inside the 20, and they gave the ball three straight times to Boston Scott. I don't know. I mean, they like to have a rotation ideally. I just don't see Boston Scott or even Kenny Gainwell, for that matter, as being like anywhere near Miles Sanders' case or, ability. So I mean, I don't know. I think every now and then they just want to give Miles Sanders a breather. I mean, Miles sometimes, he'll run out of bounds like in the final minutes of a game when the Eagles are trying to ice the clock. He does stuff like that every now and then. So maybe they just wanted to put Boston Scott in there to have him run the ball up the middle, because that's more of Boston Scott's thing. That's the only thing I can really come up with to explain that situation. But Miles is having a great year. I mean, he just set a career high for yards in a season. He's at 900. He's going to go over 1,000. I mean, he's going to make himself very attractive in the free agent market. And I mean, Miles is playing well enough where he might price himself out at coming back to Philly.
Oh, yeah.
If there's another team out there that's going to pay a running back and everything, I would think that's very possible. But, there are also other running backs who are going to be free agents too, like the guy the Giants have, Saquon Barkley. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the Eagles have a number in mind as far as like how high they're willing to go for Miles Sanders. And it's up to Miles. Like, if he thinks he can get more, he could go. If he really wants to come back, then
he's going to have to take a hometown discount. Yeah.
I don't see any kind of running. I don't see any running back taking a hometown discount when their careers are technically like so short. You talk about the average lifespan of a running back. Yeah. I think, you got to go make your money, whenever you can. And this is Miles' chance to cash in.
Yeah, so, I think the Chase Edmonds deal, like $6 to $8 million kind of ballpark, is probably the starting point for conversations. And at that point, that's going to be.
I would think Christian McCaffrey's $12 million a year is probably I think that's the ballpark that Miles Sanders would probably be looking at. Wow. I don't think the Eagles are going to that level.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you. Not when they got to sign a lot of others ahead of him in the pecking order. So, Martin, always appreciate the time. Let me get your thoughts on this Tennessee Titans matchup quickly before we wrap things up, because to me, this is the toughest matchup of the season, I think. And Derrick Henry is A.J. Dillon was a good precursor. I thought it was good for the Eagles to get a taste of that, because Derrick Henry is going to be a look. And the thing about Derrick Henry is he lines up in the slot a lot too. I think that could be a mismatch for this Eagles team.
It's going to be tough. I mean, the thing this is actually a really interesting storyline is, obviously A.J. Brown's going against his former team, and the Titans could really use A.J. Brown. because he would open things up for Derrick Henry, because they'd have to respect the pass. I mean, they haven't really replaced AJ Brown, so you can like stack the box with like maybe 7 or 8 guys, and sell out on stopping Derrick Henry. I mean, not that it works, but that would be like an ideal strategy, and take your chances like with Slay and Bradbury on the wide receivers. And I think that's probably the Eagles' best way to try to stop the Titans, because Tannehill hasn't been as effective without a guy like AJ Brown. So you gotta focus on stopping Derrick Henry. I mean, but he's big and he runs over people, and if you put if he's going one-on-one with the safety and everything like that, I mean, it's not going to end well for the Eagles. So you got to get him at the line of scrimmage. You got to try to gang tackle him and everything. I mean, that's why the pickups of Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, I mean, those are huge. I mean, the Eagles, they need those guys, especially Linval Joseph. I mean, he played, 61% in a second game. I think he's going to be playing a lot more than that against the Titans. So, yeah, it's a fascinating matchup. I mean, there's no secret on what the Titans are going to try to do, and there's, the Eagles have to find a way to stop it, and it's not easy.
Yeah, Joseph had 30 snaps right behind Hargrave and Cox, who had 31, and Jordan Davis will go a long ways in the shutting down King Henry. But, yeah, you're right. I think stack the box, let Tannehill pick you apart. Traylon Burks, the rookie, has played better of late, but still no A.J. Brown. I'm surprised. Yeah. Last time I checked, it was like 6.5 points. I'm surprised the Eagles are almost a touchdown favorite here against Tennessee.
Yeah.
Is it in Tennessee as well?
No, it's here.
It's here. Okay. Here. So
yeah,
6.5 touchdown favorite early in the week here, Martin. But what's your gut telling you? Is this a close game? Did the Eagles win this handedly? By the way, Mike Vrabel, I would say, a dark horse for Coach of the Year candidate. He's really done a lot with very little there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it'll be a pretty close game. I think the Eagles have enough to win, but, what we've seen lately is there are no easy games for the Eagles, especially with Dallas Goedert out. They got to find that, if they run the ball like they did against the Packers, they'll keep the time of possession in their favor. I mean, that's kind of like the key to winning this game, because if Tennessee is winning the time of possession, that means Derrick Henry's going crazy, and, that's not good either. So, the Eagles are going to try to do like a ball control type of offense, keep the Titans off the field, keep Derrick Henry from, if you get an early lead against the Titans, then you're forcing Tannehill to throw, and that's obviously something they don't want to do. So, I think it'll be a pretty close game. I could see the Eagles winning, but maybe by like 5 or 6 points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very close game. It could come down to another last-second field goal. We shall see.
Special teams.
Yeah, special teams. Hey, and kudos to Jake Elliott for the I don't want to say the lone bright spot, for at least giving us something to cheer on special teams. But hopefully next time we have you back, we'll have some more to cheer about. The Eagles fans certainly hope so. And DelawareOnline.com, Martin, tell the listening audience at home what else you have on deck, where they can find all that great content.
Well, I mean, the big story this week is obviously going to be A.J. Brown going against the Titans. We should probably get him tomorrow. I'm sure he'll have some interesting things to say. I mean, he never wanted to leave. He was hoping to get, a big contract extension from the Titans. And when they wouldn't do it, then he kind of like threatened to play baseball and all that. So, it'll be an interesting story. I mean, just the whole Titans, they've been one of the better teams in the AFC. They don't get a lot of credit and everything like that. So, yeah, stuff like that this week.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
I forgot to mention, like, the Eagles can actually clinch a playoff spot this weekend.
Is that right?
Win. Wow. I think like 3 other things have to happen. So, it'll be something to look out for too.
No, definitely a notch under the belt, considering all the NFC East teams would be in the playoffs if it started tomorrow, right? But yeah, I'm looking forward to the A.J. Brown coverage. I'm sure he'll he'll provide plenty of good, juicy sound bites for you. He's never short on quotes.
Yeah.
So we'll be looking out for that, and certainly be looking forward to your next appearance here on the Football Playbook. Thank you so much, Martin.
All right. Anytime. Thanks a lot, Rick.
There you go. My favorite Martin Frank, DelawareOnline.com. Always gives us straight, hard-hitting analysis when it comes to your Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, on the beat there.